Hello and welcome back to another episode of Mystery Red Reads. I am your host, Mystery Red. This is my disclaimer. This beta read in concrete is at the author's request. This video is for learning purposes. Today we're looking at a piece of original fiction. We are actually looking at chapter 5 of The Lake of Haunted Memories for Ladybug88, who I call Ladybug. And we are actually going to dive right in. I've got a playlist now for my repeat authors. Each one has their own playlist, and then in addition to that, I also include links to my other reads for them in the description. And if you are enjoying my channel, I appreciate when you buy me a cup of coffee. Thank you to everyone who has done that. There is nothing like a cup of coffee during a read, even though I really can't. I have to pause to drink it. But there's nothing like on a fall morning having a warm cup in your hands and kind of inhaling that whole scent, and it's a whole experience. And I get eager to sit next to my window and get started on a read. And so this chapter, so in chapter 4, I'm not going to do a huge recap, but I had just told Ladybug that I was going to kind of look back a little bit as keeping in mind whether or not, if we started with chapter 5, if it could continue, because it's kind of short, and I was wondering if the story could go on some more. But now I see we're not with Howard in chapter 5, we're with Ruth. So no, that won't work, to keep our points of view separate. So then we're just left wondering and wanting to turn the page. And I don't think there's entirely anything wrong with a short chapter. I think it keeps it, especially if the tension's high and you continue to turn the pages, which you would, because you want to know, what happened to Arthur, and now you want to know what happened to Howard, and she was setting that scene, or setting up to tell that tale. So here we're switching over to Ruth. Let's see what happens here. Chapter 5, Ruth. Sparkling Lake, Wisconsin, September 2019. With the canoe finally back to shore, Ruth allowed her arms to rest. Barb dug her paddle into the shallow water, disembarked, and waded ankle deep, her waterproof boots sloshing. All right, so we've got, I don't really want the finally there with the canoe back to shore. I'm inclined to suggest we omit finally. Suggest omitting finally. And then I'm noticing we got 1, 2, 3 commas in our second sentence. So let me muse over that. With the canoe back to shore, Ruth allowed her arms to rest. Barb dug her paddle into the shallow water, disembarked, and waded ankle deep, her waterproof boots sloshing. I feel like you could let one of these things go. For example, actually, you could probably just let go of ankle deep. Maybe. Let's just try it and see what happens. Barb dug her paddle into the shallow water, disembarked, and waded. Waded? Her waterproof boots sloshing. And waded in, ankle deep. I think maybe, I like the visual here of her waterproof boots sloshing. I like it, but at the same time, I feel like you need to let something, it's just one too many things. So pick whichever one you're willing to let go. Barb dug her paddle into the shallow water, disembarked, and waded ankle deep. Yeah, I'm going to pretend that this is gone, and we're going to read it that way. Barb dug her paddle into the shallow water, disembarked, and waded ankle deep. Anna and Carl climbed out and helped bring the rest of the canoe aground. Yeah. Oh, I like it, but at the same time, I feel like suggest omitting her waterproof boots sloshing. So I'm going to give you the comment, but you're going to have my verbal musing of what my thought process is as to why I'm making that recommendation. So that you know, I love the pretty words. I love the visual, and ultimately it is your choice, but you do have 3 commas. It feels a little long, and it does read well without it. And so I'm inclined to say we probably need to let it go. All right. Anna and Carl climbed out and helped bring the rest of the canoe aground. Ruth got out last. Thank you all for being patient and showing me the ropes. Any time, Carl replied. You're doing an awesome job. Barb cleared her throat, and Ruth could tell Carl was trying to be encouraging. In silence, they all carried the canoe to the trailer attached to the pickup truck. In the distance, a dog barked. Ruth looked up as a chocolate Labrador loped from the other end of the beach where a lone white car stood. Above a pair of intelligent brown eyes, spots of lighter fur resembled eyebrows, and a smattering of gray around the dog's muzzle hinted at his age. She squatted, and the dog approached, a blue-boned shaped tag hanging from a red collar. It read Tyson, followed by a 715 area code phone number. Ruth pet his head and under his throat. What a cute name you have. Tyson touched his cold nose to hers, just like her old dachshund and retriever mix used to. A memory returned of Bambi jumping on Ruth's legs, fluffy yellow tail wagging and mouth half open, hinting at a smile at the end of her long snout. Rejoicing in the memory, Ruth scratched behind Tyson's droopy ears, his lips parting like Bambi's. Quick footsteps and a mechanical grinding sound came from the same direction as Tyson had. They announced a gray-haired woman in slacks and a windbreaker, jogging toward Ruth and spreading sand in her trail. Behind the woman, a man rode a motorized wheelchair, a yellow-brimmed green ball cap on his head, and a white letter G on the front. Tyson turned his snout toward the approaching couple and let out a soft bark. There you are, pup, the man said. His legs ended at mid-thigh, only slightly longer. One slightly longer. Okay. I was thinking about this slightly. All right, this is what I'm going to do. I am going to highlight your LY words so that you can see them. And you can just take the highlight off if you don't need to do anything with them. But by highlighting them, you'll be able to quickly scan through here and see if you have too many or if there's just one or two. But at least that way we're tracking them to kind of note them. I'm noting it because I'm going to keep reading. And if it becomes a thing, I won't have to go, oh my gosh, that is so, it feels like it's too much. Let's try that's a little better. A little bit, oh, it's such a, what is up with me today in the colors? Oh, I don't want yellow. That's so boring. I guess we'll go with something. How about pinkish? Maybe. Okay, that's. Oh my gosh, you guys. We'll go with the light pink. We'll go with light pink. Okay. Okay. There you are, pup, the man said. His legs ended at mid-thigh, one slightly longer. I hope he didn't jump on you. The woman leaned forward, catching her breath. Not at all, Ruth smiled. He's such a sweetie. Carl bent at the waist and stroked Tyson's fur. He looks like good company. I've got one at home, Ignatius. That's a nice name, the woman said. The man gazed at the trailer, his eyes sparkling. Nice big canoe you've got there. Darkened spots decorated the back of his hands, one lacking fingers other than a thumb. I'm going to say I really love this. I know that I think I've read some of this and we've reordered it, but I just want to note that I really love this detail. That's a Tripper XL, the only one I know that can fit the four of us, plus all our gear, Carl said. We're collecting lake samples and taking measurements for a school project. We're students at UW. After Sparkling Lake, we'll go to... Ruth turned toward Carl and Anna. Barb, who stood further back, had mentioned the name in their limnology class after the four of them came together to form their project group. Ruth wasn't sure of the spelling or the pronunciation. What's the other lake called? Lake Serviette, Anna said as she removed her life jacket and tossed it inside the canoe. Serviette is the French for napkin, you dummy, Barb said. Anna blushed. Ruth thought of saying something soothing, but didn't want to embarrass her further. A moment of awkward silence followed until Barb said, It's called Lake Chevenette. The man launched into a coughing fit so violent his body tipped forward. He would have tumbled headfirst off the wheelchair if the woman hadn't helped him. Held him. Okay, I was going to say we have helped and helped. Hadn't held him. She helped him resume his previous position. Dislodged from his head, his ball cap rolled away, windswept, and Tyson chased after it. Ruth ran, caught it, and shook off the sand and debris. The woman cradled the man's head to her shoulder, sparse strands of gray hair flying up in disarray. Her movements lacking hesitation. Her movements lacking hesitation. Lacked hesitation? We're going to read it the way it is and then contemplate maybe if we need to, or we'll just keep going. We'll see. Her movements lacking hesitation, she stroked his face, the pained weariness of her expression showing she had done this countless times before. Okay, and now I'm going to read it as though it's lacked. Her movements lacked hesitation as she stroked his face. The pained weariness of her expression showed she had done this countless times before. Okay, so I read it two different ways. I guess if you like it the way it is, keep it. And if you like it the way I read it, change it. There you go. And we're going to keep going. While Barb and Carl carried the canoe toward the water line and Anna followed with life jackets, Ruth waited until the man's coughing subsided. Eyes wide and staring toward the water, he ignored her presence. His hands in his lap, palms upward, his remaining fingers curled like the talons of a broken-winged eagle. All right, so we've got 1, 2, 3 commas again. Typically when I've got 3, I kind of look closer. I was looking for the sentence to be broken into 2. Eyes wide and staring toward the water, he ignored her presence. Period. Maybe. Let's see. Maybe. Presence. Period. His hands rested in his lap. And then continue. Maybe. See what you think. Tyson sat by the wheelchair, his face nuzzling one of the man's leg stumps. Even the dog reacted to the scene like an everyday occurrence. How would it feel to live like this, responding so violently to something so banal as the name of a lake? How did it compare to Ruth's behavior in the elective exotics course back at NC State? In the 9 intervening months between that day and when she'd packed her life away in North Carolina and flown to Wisconsin to start anew on a blank slate, she had often wondered about the root cause of her many phobias. All right, so this is kind of a long line. In the intervening months between that day and when she'd packed her life away in North Carolina to flown to Wisconsin to start anew, I think that starting anew is literally a blank slate. So I'm going to mess it up. Then I'm going to fix it. Then I'm going to insert a comment that I think it's redundant, or we could just omit it. Suggest omitting on a blank slate. Yes. Okay. Now I'm going to read it without it, and you see which way you prefer it. I'm going to go back a line and flow in. How did it compare to Ruth's behavior in the elective exotics course back at NC State? In the 9 intervening months between that day and when she'd packed her life away in North Carolina and flown to Wisconsin to start anew, she had often wondered about the root cause of her many phobias. Is there anything I can do? She asked. It's okay. Our car is just there, the woman pointed, but Ruth didn't look, absorbed as she was by the man's transformation. Tears ran down his face now, his mouth open, his breathing ragged. His breathing or breaths? Breathing, breaths. I'm going to try it with breaths, and you just decide. Tears ran down his face now, his mouth open, his breaths ragged. I think it's completely a personal opinion. I think either one works just fine interchangeably. The woman hesitated, her expression hinting at something she wanted to say. Sensing its importance, Ruth gave it time. I like that. I like that interaction. I like the way that you gave pause. I really like the way you worded it. Yeah, I really like that. Sensing its importance, Ruth gave it time. I love that. I'll help you get to your car, she said. Thank you, but there's no need. Your friends are waiting for you. The woman jerked her head toward the pickup truck, where Carl and Barb loaded the equipment box and paddles in the bed. Several feet away, Anna paced and smoked a cigarette. I insist. Ruth turned her head back. I'll help you to your car, and then I'll join them. The woman stood upright without letting go of the man. She pushed his wheelchair. Tyson let out a soft bark and galloped ahead. Still holding the ball cap in one hand, Ruth walked beside the couple, sand and gravel crunching underfoot. They went around a fallen log and made their way to the white car she had spotted earlier. With practiced ease, the woman transferred the man onto the passenger seat and latched his seatbelt. His eyes open and unmoving. His eyes were open and unmoving? Okay, we're going to read it the way it is and then contemplate it if we need to. His eyes open and unmoving, he still hadn't regained the will or ability to speak. All right, so we've got it that way, and let's just maybe try it and see if we like it. I don't know. His eyes were open and unmoving, but he still hadn't regained the will or ability to speak. So it adds 2 words by doing that. It's going to be your personal opinion. I think it's fine either way. I felt like when the first time I read it, I wanted there to be his eyes were, and that could be because typically that'd be the brain muscle, muscle memory of what words typically go together when presented that way. With practice ease, the woman transferred the man onto the passenger seat and latched his seatbelt. His eyes were open and unmoving, but he still hadn't regained the will or ability to speak. Ruth followed around the car and helped the woman lift the wheelchair into the trunk. Okay, so I'm having another thought now. I like the way that read, but I am noticing something. And just for giving us a glimpse, I'm going to highlight and we can kind of get a better picture of if we have an issue. And then we can figure out what to do about it if we do. So I'm going to back up. First, I want to mark my spot. I'm going to leave off right here. All right, we're going to go back. Oh, why? Stop. Okay, there we go. And here we go, here we go. Okay. Did we name her? I feel like we named her. I feel like we did. Okay, and I'm definitely seeing a thing. All right. I'm going back more just to kind of be thorough. There it is again. If this highlighting frustrates you, you can just select all and remove it to get it all to go away really fast. Let's see. Okay. Oops. Did we name her? I feel like contemplating this at this time now. Okay, then let me go back. All right. Ruth petted his head and under his throat. What a cute name you have. Okay, did she already introduce herself? I'm backing up. All right, we've got Ruth showing the ropes, Carl, Barb. In the distance, the dog has barked and is arriving. Okay, he's kind of the entry to the couple. And Tyson touched his nose to hers, just like her old Dachshund Retriever mix. I'm wondering about this. Okay, so this is one dog. What could this possibly be hyphenated Dachshund Retriever to join it together without the and? Is that a possibility too? And that could be a personal preference. I'm not sure. But if it's together, then I don't think of it as separate, as 2 separate dogs. Whereas if I see Dachshund and Retriever, I contemplate whether or not it's 2 different dogs, but then I know that it's not because I've already read some of it. Like this is a review for me. So, oh, and I mean a question mark by this. Oh, where's my little, there we go. And I mean this to be a question mark because everything I say is all obviously just suggestions or musings. So I don't want anyone to think that I'm trying to tell someone what to do with their work. I'm just thinking of it as if it was mine. What would I do and what would I consider doing? And then often I'm indecisive anyway. So let's see, touched his nose. Okay, so now I'm back to looking for specifically when the woman and the man are introduced. Quick footsteps and a mechanical grinding came from the same direction as Tyson had. They announced a gray-haired woman in slacks and a windbreaker jogging toward Ruth and spreading sand in her trail. Behind, oh goodness. Okay, we got another one. Now, initially, it's okay. Behind the woman, because we're first meeting her, a man rode a motorized wheelchair, a yellow-brimmed ball cap on his head, and a white-lettered G on the front. Tyson turned his snout toward the approaching couple and let out a soft bark. "There you are, pup," the man said. His legs ended at mid-thigh, one slightly longer. "I hope he didn't jump on you." The woman leaned forward, catching her breath. "Not at all," Ruth smiled. "He's such a sweetie." Carl bent at the waist and stroked Tyson's fur. "He looks like good company. I've got one at home, Ignatius." "That's a nice name," the woman said. So at this point, we've not gotten to names because I'm trying to contemplate how I'm going to make. All right. They talk about the canoe, the Tripper XL. We talk about the lakes, and then he's triggered. So we don't have a name yet. And so I was trying to figure out what else I could recommend as far as the woman as it goes on. It's a lot. All right, I'm going to keep reading and then kind of contemplate this because I don't know what else you're going to call her as you refer to her. Okay, when we first meet her, I don't notice it. I don't think I notice it as much because you're first meeting her and you don't know her name. But as the chapter goes on, I start to wonder not just her name, but yeah, it starts to stand out, and we don't want that. So that is a thing. We are going to have to come back to it. Let's keep going. I left off here. The woman opened the driver's side door and pulled the seat forward. Tyson shook himself, ears flapping and collar tag jangling. He jumped in and turned fussily about. I would consider omitting that. Consider omitting fussily. Okay. And about for a second. Let's read it without it. He jumped in and turned about for a second or two until he settled himself in the rear seat, eyes locked with Ruth through the window. The woman moved the seat into place. So we've got seat and seat. Okay. Oh, I'm picking different colors. Isn't that just wonderful? It's not helping at all. And I probably should give this a different color so that, there we go. Until he settled himself in the rear seat, eyes locked with Ruth through the window. The woman moved the seat into place and closed the door, as though she didn't want the man to hear what she was about to say. Okay. He jumped in and turned about for a second or two until he settled himself in the rear seat. How about the back? Oh, you could just say in the back. Maybe? Suggest swapping rear seat for back to resolve word echo on seat in the next line, if that makes sense. Okay. So yeah, that would fix it. Let's see. Let's try it out. He jumped in and turned about for a second or two until he settled himself in the back seat, eyes locked with Ruth through the window. The woman moved the seat into place and closed the door as though she... Did I say the back seat? I needed to say back and not say seat. In the back. I did it wrong. Okay. I know I did. Oh my goodness, what's wrong with me? He jumped in and turned about for a second or two until he settled himself in the back, eyes locked with Ruth through the window. The woman moved the seat into place and closed the door as though she didn't want the man to hear what she was about to say. As you can see, it isn't the first time this has happened. We'll be on our way now, but before we go, I need to tell you something. She glanced at the man through the closed driver's side window. I'm Olivia Magnuson, by the way. Ruth Kisty, pleased to meet you. Likewise, Olivia attempted a wistful smile. Please don't go to the other lake. Lake She brought an index finger to her lips. Shh, don't say the name. It's bad luck. Howard, my husband. He's been in agonizing pain ever since he set foot there. She lowered her gaze, appearing to have realized the irony of applying the expression to someone with no feet. On the passenger seat, the man's eyes stared. Okay. Suggest omitting vacantly. There's a curse on that place, Olivia said. It has killed too many people, my father and brother included. I'm sorry, I don't mean to pry, but how did they die? Over 50 years ago, a man bought the land to build a lodge, and people then started calling the lake by his last name. He hired loggers to cut down the trees on the shore, and that crew included my father and Howard's. My father and Howard's. Her eyes glistened. My father-in-law, Arthur was his name, survived when everyone else died. He claimed the trees slaughtered the other men in front of him, including my father. Ruth wanted to ask why the trees had spared Arthur, but she couldn't understand how trees could have killed loggers, and she didn't want her doubt to show through her words. She wouldn't dare inflict more painful memories on Olivia. The landowner went missing, and his daughter sold the area to a company about 20 years later. They revived the lodge idea and hired a second crew. I begged Howard and my brother Otto not to enlist, but they insisted. The company had made all sorts of promises and offered better pay than they could get anywhere else in the state. She paused and wiped at her cheeks. Ruth had to believe her. If Olivia had been putting on a performance, she would be on Broadway winning awards rather than pushing a wheelchair on a lake shore in the northern Wisconsin. Otto didn't come back, but Howard survived, and I've often questioned whether that was luck or her eyes bloodshot and overflowing. Olivia gazed toward the water. You don't want to go there. Believe me, you really don't. Okay. It reads really well. It's good. I like this organization of it. I like the how we got that little snippet from Howard before, kind of setting it up for his motivation to go, and we kind of know that things did not turn out well for him. So that is working well for you. I'm liking this reorganization of it. I am wondering about the woman, what to do about the woman. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There's 7 of them before we get to her name, but I like the flow of the story, and we've got 8, 9, but initially, 10, 11, 12. Oh my goodness. Okay. All right. The first 3 I kind of chalk up to them just getting introduced. I guess we could look at it and think about it a couple of different ways. So there's a paragraph and there's the woman, and there's a paragraph and there's the woman, and there's a paragraph and there's the woman. And there are 3 of them on one page. Then we go down to the next page and we have 2 more. But they're kind of close together and they're in the same paragraph. That's a little bit more of a concern to me. So if we look closer, what could we do here to avoid saying the woman a second time in the same paragraph? He would have tumbled headfirst off the chair if she hadn't held him. Okay, well then we have she here. Okay, so if the woman hadn't held him, she helped him resume his previous position. Dislodged from his head, his ball cap rolled away, windswept, and Tyson chased after it. Ruth ran, caught it, and shook off the sand and debris. The woman cradled the man's head to her shoulder. Okay, I think that you could get away with if she hadn't held him. Let me back up a little bit more to make sure it works. We're students at UW. After Sparkling Lake, we'll go to da-da-da-da. What's the other lake called? Lake Serviette, Anna said as she removed her life jacket and tossed it inside the canoe. Serviette's French for napkin, you dummy, which, by the way, I love that. Anna blushed. Ruth thought of saying something soothing, but didn't want to embarrass her further. A moment of awkward silence followed until Barb said, it's called Lake Chevenette. The man launched into a coughing fit so violent his body tipped forward. He would have tumbled headfirst off the wheelchair if... Okay, well, we don't want him to think it's Barb, so we have to have the woman. Hadn't held him. She helped him resume his previous position. Dislodged from his head, his ball cap rolled away, windswept, and Tyson chased after it. Ruth ran, caught it, and shook off the sand and debris. And then we can't start with she. because that would imply it was Ruth. So that won't work either. Oh my goodness. We might be, I'm kind of stumped. Okay. What to do. Let me scroll down and see how many more times this happens. So we've got it in this paragraph. Okay, well, we can look through each one and see if any of them can be replaced with she. Let's see. Well, we got she asked, but if we could swap out a name here, we might be able to use she here. So let's look at that for a second. In the 9 intervening months between that day and when she packed her life away in North Carolina and flown to Wisconsin to start anew, Ruth had often wondered about the cause of her many phobias. Is there anything I can do, she asked. Or let's try it with she, the way it is, and then try Ruth here. I'm going to try Ruth here. In the 9 intervening months between that day and when she'd packed her life away in North Carolina and flown to Wisconsin to start anew, she had often wondered about the root cause of her many phobias. Is there anything I can do? Ruth asked. It's okay, our car is just there, she pointed, but Ruth didn't look, absorbed as she was by the man's transformation. Okay, so if you were going to change this to Ruth, and then this to she pointed, but Ruth didn't look. You could put to absorbed by the man's transformation and omit as she was, if that makes sense. I'm hesitant to mark up the document with these suggestions because they really are kind of musings. It's kind of sorting out. We've identified that there's something that we need to minimize or lessen. And I'm not entirely sure what your thoughts are going to be about it. So I hesitate to mark up the document and make it confusing. Especially because I'm undecided, because it's kind of like when I said, okay, let's try it out by highlighting to see if there's an issue. And so now I'm kind of like, okay, what could we possibly do here and there? And so it doesn't mean you will do it. It means that we are considering what could we do to minimize this. This would resolve these slight changes would resolve this one. Okay, so that's one less in this space, and we have 4 on one page. So I think that that's a good thing to resolve one of them. Let me keep reading. Tears ran down his face now, his mouth open, his breathing ragged. The woman hesitated, her expression hinting at something she wanted to say. Sensing its importance, Ruth gave it time. I'll help you get to your car, she said. Thank you, but there's no need. Your friends are waiting for you. You could have Ruth here, but then you've got Ruth giving it time. So I don't know. We have to think about this for a second. Okay. Sensing its importance, Ruth gave it time. I'll help you get to your car, she said. Thank you, but there's no need. Your friends are waiting for you. The words his caregiver, the man's caregiver, because at this point, Ruth doesn't know the man's relationship with the woman. And as he is disabled, she might, and honestly, Olivia is his caregiver. She's not only his wife, but she's his caregiver. So caregiver could be another option, and that's one that doesn't have to be introduced. It's kind of implied when this is the person who is pushing the wheelchair. So that could be an option you could consider if you liked it, and the logic is there, it's sound behind it. Although you may want to use that interchange the woman and caregiver sooner in the chapter if you choose to go that route, so that it's not all of a sudden you're mentioning a caregiver down in the bottom, if that makes sense, which means you could also, that would eliminate one of these and make it caregiver. So you don't have, that's the first right there. Let's contemplate that for a second. They announced a gray-haired woman in slacks and a windbreaker jogging toward Ruth and spreading sand in her trail. Behind her, oh, you could say behind her. Yeah, so you could eliminate the woman, with behind her, a man rode a motorized wheelchair, a yellow-brimmed ball cap on his head, and a white letter G on the front. So that eliminates the woman. Let's keep going. Tyson turned his snout toward the approaching couple and let out a soft bark. There you are, pup, the man said. His legs ended at mid-thigh, one slightly longer. I hope he didn't jump on you. The man's caregiver leaned forward, catching her breath. Not at all, Ruth smiled. He's such a sweetie. Carl bent at the waist and stroked Tyson's fur. He looks like good company. I've got one at home, Ignatius. That's a nice name, the woman said. That might work. Maybe, if you like it. But it would eliminate the womans from the very first page, which is probably good. And then down here, you have a second page. You could flip-flop with the man's caregiver and the woman again here, and maybe not refer to, since you referred to her as the man's caregiver up here, down here you could refer to her as the caregiver, and it would still make sense. He would have tumbled headfirst off the chair if his caregiver hadn't held him. That works beautifully. She helped him resume his previous position, and then you get the woman here. You can use the woman. I think what I would recommend is just trying to either use she, her, his caregiver, or the caregiver, and the woman. And so you only have like one the woman phrase on a page. Yeah, I think that's what I'm going to suggest. But I'm not going to move it around for you. I'll let you look at it and figure it out. You might not like that idea at all. You might like it. I'm not sure. It's just, if I'm going to point something out, I like to try to offer you up something if possible. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 12 of them is kind of a lot. So that is my thoughts there. Otherwise, the chapter read really clean. It read clean. It read really clean. And I do like this reorganization. I think it is working for you. So with that said, I will see you guys next time on Mystery Read Reads.